Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy enhancing human connection in the age of AI, no other than Mr. Joshua Bernstein.
Hey, Daniel, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Mr. Joshua on Book 101. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Absolutely. Joshua Bernstein, and for the past 28 years, I've been really interested in human connection, specifically trying to figure out what enables it scientifically and how we can get better at it so that we can use it both for personal and our professional relations. So, what I've done over these last several years is I have figured out something that we have all experienced, and that is, have you ever met someone and just immediately clicked or felt in sync with them? I think we've all
Mhm.
had that experience, and it feels really amazing. But the challenge has been that getting in sync with people has been a random process, right? We never know exactly when it's going to happen to us. And so, what I have done is come up with a protocol, a way to teach people how to create this synchrony as a skill set. So, when we dive into the science of it, which we can go as deep as we'd like, in neuroscience, they call this interpersonal synchrony. And what's fascinating about this, Daniel, is you can measure when this happens between two people by measuring, for example, our brainwave activity or measuring our heart rates or the rate at which we breathe. There are a number of ways in our brain and body that we can measure when people are in sync. And what the research is showing is that synchrony is essentially the operating system for human connection. So if you're in sync with someone, it feels really good. You trust them. You probably want to spend time together. And if you're not in sync with them, it doesn't feel so great. So as we talked about how in the age of I think we're going to find that the importance of human connection becomes infinitely greater, right? The more we utilize technology, the more we sometimes fear it a little bit, the more we rely on AI and other technologies. There's going to be an increasing desire for people to get away from the technology and connect more deeply, one to many. And then there are also ways that we're going to want to interact with the AI technologies, in a more human way. So those are the areas that I've been diving into.
Mr. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And tell us, Mr. Joshua, the concept suggests that influence is an energetic or vibrational exchange that happens before language. Can you explain the scientific or philosophical basis of how thought alone can shift someone's emotional state?
Absolutely. And what I'll share comes partially from scientific research, a lot of it just from lived experience now that I've done this with 100,000 plus people around the world. And what I've noticed is it doesn't matter if you're in person with someone or if we're doing it like we are over Zoom or over a telecommunications platform. It operates the same no matter what. But as you look into the research, as people get in sync with one another, the primary mechanisms that have been focused on are things like mirror neurons that tend to make us kind of recognize and replicate what we observe in the people that are in front of us. But if we take it outside of that, and you said something interesting, more kind of philosophically, how do you think this works? Many cultures for thousands of years have had this belief essentially that we are all one, right? And people express that in different ways. But the essence of that idea is that we are all part of the same fabric, the same substance. And that's the way that I believe the world works. And that's the model I use as it relates to creating this connection with thought. And here's why. So if you assume that we're all connected, right, and quantum physics is starting to show us that, what they call entanglement, right, that once two particles interact, they're forever linked to one another. And if we imagine that we're all essentially connected to this same substance, then the question becomes, how do we remove the things that are keeping us separate from one another? And that's the focus of what I do. And I focus a lot, I'll give you an example, on brainwave activity. So, in your normal kind of waking brain state, we're in what we call beta brainwave activity. That's right now, you and I are both primarily in beta. And that keeps us focused inside of our own heads on who we are as individuals. But as you learn to slow down your brainwave activity into what we call alpha or theta, the distinction between you and me starts to disappear. And by relaxing that brainwave activity, we start to let our bodies and our brains naturally connect up with one another. Because synchrony is something that you were born with. It's what I call a biological technology. So everybody listening here, watching here, already knows how to do it. Their brains and bodies have that natural capability. The question is really, how can we relax our minds, relax our conscious thoughts, and let the connection happen with each other? So those are the two kind of lenses through which I look at it. Number one, the scientific research lens, which has identified specific parts of the body, specific mechanisms in the body that enable this kind of connection. And then I combine that with that more, call it spiritual philosophy or view on how it happens. And that starts to touch up against quantum physics and other areas that are becoming the focus of a tremendous amount of research these days.
Mr. Joshua, you talk about an invisible connection. What is the connection made of? Is it empathy, mirror neurons, biofeedback, or something more suitable like energy or intention?
The great question, Daniel. And I
Thank
would
you.
say all of the above. And what I mean by that is, again, if we start from the idea that we are all part of the same substance, some people call that source, some people call that God. There are many different ways for people, right, to call that idea and that substance. And the explanations that we use, you just mentioned intention, right? Energy, mirror neurons. To my mind, those are just different ways to explain the same phenomena. So, in terms of what's actually connecting, that is the missing piece that we don't know, right? So, when we feel that deep connection, we both know it's happening. You feel it in your body, right? We can
Yes.
measure it using scientific technology. And starting now, you're going to see this ability in all of the technology you have. So the headphones you're wearing right now, 1 year from now, they'll measure your brain waves. The AirPods people wear, the wearables they have on their wrist or the rings they wear, all of that will be able to track this kind of activity. So the reality is we may never know exactly what is connecting, right? When we say we've connected and we can measure it with our technology, we might never know exactly what that substance is, right? Some people call it ether, source, God. To my mind, what's most important is just understanding how to call it work with it, how to enable ourselves to relax so that the connection happens. And then for people to use whatever terminology they might want to use to describe why it's happening, right? So if we're talking about research journals, we're going to use one set of terminology. If we're talking about more spiritual or meditative practices, we might describe it in a different way. Does that make sense, Daniel?
Makes sense, Mr. Joshua. And what is actually happening in that critical moment before you speak that determines whether get yes? or a no?
So all decisions are based and driven by emotional state. So, what I mean by that is when you make a decision, when anyone makes a decision, that decision is done outside of your conscious awareness. Your brain, body just make that decision. And then we use our words, our language, our logic to justify why we made that decision. And the justification is really for ourselves, for our friends, for our spouses, for our colleagues, right? To try to justify what it is that just happened. So if you think about influence, what it really then comes down to is number one, knowing what is the outcome that you're looking for, right? What is the decision or the end state that you're looking to achieve? Number two, asking yourself, what is the emotional state that includes that decision? And I'll give you an example in a moment. And then the third thing is inside of that emotional state, what do we have to say to get to that decision that we're looking for? So, the example about emotional state I use is imagine you were walking into a McDonald's restaurant and you walked up to the counter and you asked for a big plate of sushi, right? The person at McDonald's would look at you like you were crazy, right? Because sushi's not on the menu, it doesn't exist inside of that world. And in a similar sense, if someone, let's say, is in a depressed state, the depressed state does not have the ability for them to, let's say, take massive action or feel happy, right? It doesn't exist inside of that environment. So for influence, the most important thing to do is to create the emotional state with you and the other person that enables them to take the decision or activity that you want them to. And the way that it works inside of the sync protocol that I've developed is that when you relax your brain and body and then allow that connection between the two of you or the group of people to take place, all you then have to do is shift your own emotional state, and the other person will immediately go into that emotional state that you have gone into. And that's that area where you had mentioned mirror neurons and other explanations we give to it. But at the very simple level, decide what you want to achieve for the outcome. Make sure it's beneficial to you and everyone involved. Make the connection with the other person. Put yourself into the emotional state that includes that outcome, and then use your language, your words to move towards that outcome. And when I talk about, teaching people to get in sync, Daniel, there are three elements to that. One is this brain sync, which is really what we're talking about right now. Number two is language sync. So you can choose the words that you use very specifically to also enhance the feeling of connection that you have with the other person. It's something that I call the shift code, which stands for see, hear, feel, think. And what that means is every person, when they talk, will choose a preference of speaking in language about what they see, hear, feel, or think. And when you identify that preference and then speak to the other person using their own preference, that creates a language synchrony, which leads to the kind of interbrain synchrony we're talking about. And then the third piece is the body, right? You can also use your body, things that many people have heard of, things like matching and mirroring or breathing at the same rate. So when you use all of those three levers, what ends up happening in the world of influence is the person does not feel a separation from you anymore. It's as if the two people have joined together and they're making a group decision that feels like each person is the one making their own decision.
Very well said, Mr. Joshua. Beautifully, beautifully articulated. And tell us, what are your short term and long term goals?
That's a good one, Daniel. So, my short term goal is to start to kind of make this technology more widely available to people. Meaning it's already in a format that's very easy to teach someone inside of, call it a coaching or a training environment, in order to start to teach people how to use these connection technologies. But as we touched upon at the top of the episode, with AI rolling out, in order to get this in the hands of everyone around the world, it's going to need to be embedded into AI and technology. So, my kind of short to midterm goal is to start to leverage some of the language models that we all use, ChatGPT and others, to start to provide essentially a coaching companion, an AI that is able to help people learn to create this and also can measure and monitor this in their daily activities. So you can imagine a world whereby on your phone, if you're using a chat GPT, it will be able to, let's say, listen, you record something, it will tell you linguistically, are you in sync with another person? You can start to use, again, your glasses that will have augmented reality or virtual reality. And so we'll start to be able to monitor and measure synchrony in various environments in real time so that we can start to help people. And then the big long term goal is really to unite humanity. And what I mean by that is, over these last several years, I really feel like the fabric of humanity has been torn apart, within families, within friend groups, within societies, between kind of physical separation, which we all went through, all of the polarization in the media and in the news. I believe we have an opportunity now to get beneath all of those perceived differences and teach people how to really connect deeply with one another. And why I say that is, after doing this now across 100,000 plus people, what I've noticed is that this technology of getting in sync, it does not have any concern for or relation to things that we perceive separate us. So it doesn't matter your age, your gender, your religion, your sexual orientation. None of that is relevant for creating synchrony. Our bodies literally don't care about that. All they want to do is connect up with people very deeply. So that's my long-term goal, is really to enable hundreds of millions of people to learn how to do this and to start to use it in their daily lives.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Joshua, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Well, I don't know who might want to be like me, but my advice for people in general, and I'll leave them with one kind of a quick takeaway on that, is, look for the similarities in people, find the good in every interaction that you have. And the exercise I often share with people to do that, and they'll give them a very quick taste of this, is the next time that you go out into public, imagine that everyone you see is you. So, literally, imagine seeing your face, your body in the place of any other person that you encounter. And if you do that just for a few minutes a day, your life will get significantly better. You'll start to treat other people better. You'll actually treat yourself better. And might surprise people, it might not, because what we're talking here as it relates to being connected into spirituality, just by putting out that intent to find people as if they were you, it impacts the way that you move through the world. It impacts the way people respond to you. So that would be my quick piece of advice for people to kind of put to work today in their own lives.
Thank you for that advice, Mr. Joshua. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
So, absolutely. As it relates to influence itself, I would recommend the book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, who's considered like the grandfather of the influence industry. It's a fascinating read. about how humans interplay and react with one another. As it relates to something totally outside of that area, my favorite book is called The Princess Bride. I don't know if you've
Mm,
ever read the book or seen the
yes,
movie by William Goldman,
definitely.
but that to me is just such an amazing work of storytelling, an incredible story itself. And as a quick side note, I actually wrote and produced a musical comedy based on that book several years ago. And so I love it for the book itself, but I also love it for the structure that it gives. If you remember about The Princess Bride, it's a grandfather who's come home to read to his grandson who's homesick from school for the day. And it has this great narrative that both shows the relationship with the grandfather and grandson, as well as the incredible fantasy, the story that he ends up reading to him.
Thank you for the recommended books, Mr. Joshua. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101 love letters in third season, and my movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Joshua, for someone who is utterly intrigued but was never considered this before, what is the absolute first step they should take today to begin exploring this invisible world of influence?
So the first thing they can do, and we'll attach to the notes as well, is to reach out to me. I'd love to have conversations with anyone who's interested here. You can find me on X. It's at Joshua Bernstein. You can reach me at Joshua at thesyncadvantage.com, and I'll give those informations to you, Daniel, as well. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. So those are the best places to start. I'd welcome any and all conversations, questions around this topic, because it's something that can draw people in from so many different facets, right? Some people might be interested in influence, others in spirituality, others in neuroscience and research. So would really welcome any interest and invitations that people might have to talk about those various topics.
Mr. Joshua Bernstein, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy or any projects that you're doing right now?
So the big one to keep an eye out for is a book I'm writing, and it's called The Age of Synchrony. And that's a book that's going to talk more broadly about how society is waking up to the idea that we are connected and that there are many ways for us to find that connection. Not connection to self, connection to other people, and connection to source. I would say just keep your eyes out for that book again, The Age of Synchrony, and it's going to be coming out very soon.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Joshua Bernstein, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come, more and more empowering upcoming books to come. So, Mr. Joshua, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
More to come, people. See you soon.